I would tell again, people, the first time you do a recipe, to try to get as close as you can to it, to try to duplicate the taste of whoever did it. But of course, you're not going to duplicate that taste, because if I do a chicken, I do my own chicken, the next time I don't look at my recipe. Even if I do it the same way, it won't taste the same exactly. Or if it tastes the same, I have to adjust. There is no chicken with exactly the same amount of fat, the same amount of whatever. So when you write a recipe down, by the time you finish it there, but it's never to be done exactly the same again.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Stephanie Leydon. I work in the GBH News Department. Are we echoing? Is that okay? Sound okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you all for joining us here in person in our theater, and to the hundreds watching remotely from locations across the country, here to celebrate Jacques Pépin.
Thank you.
We also want to thank Beacon Circle and Champion Circle patrons who are in the audience this afternoon. And to get the afternoon started, it is my pleasure to introduce Jacques Pépin. Jacques is the winner of 16 James Beard Awards. The author of over 30 cookbooks, including Essential Pépin, Jacques Pépin Quick and Simple, his memoir, The Apprentice, the menu book, which we have on stage, and his newest book, Cooking My Way. Jacques is a chef, author, television personality, educator, and artist, and has starred in 12 acclaimed PBS cooking series. Jacques' dedication to culinary education led to the creation of the Jacques Pépin Foundation in 2016, and that foundation supports community kitchens that offer free life skills and culinary training to adults with high barriers to employment. Jacques was also awarded France's highest distinction, the Legion of Honor. And we're also thrilled to have with us today on stage Chef Jeremy Sewall. Jeremy is the chef and partner of Row 34 Restaurants with locations in Boston Seaport, Cambridge's Kendall Square, Burlington, Mass., and Portsmouth, New Hampshire. You are a busy man, Jeremy.
Some days.
He is the author of James Beard Award-nominated The New England Kitchen, Fresh Takes on Seasonal Recipes, along with co-author Erin Byers-Murray, Oysters, A Celebration in the Raw with Marion Swaybill, and the Row 34 Cookbook, Stories and Recipes from a Neighborhood Oyster Bar. Jeremy and Jacques, what a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, you're both chefs. You both teach at Boston University, but there's a real connection here. How do you know one another? Tell us a little bit about your friendship.
I'll tell the story of the first time we met, which he'll never remember. And just, it was 20 years ago. I had just moved back from California, and Jacques' biography just came out, The Apprentice, and he was in Boston promoting it. And I had just gotten my first job back in Boston. It was at the Hotel Commonwealth. And Jacques was staying in the hotel, as he has for 20 years. And somebody said, chef's in the lobby, and I had my book, and I was like, I'm just hoping he signs it. And I can't wait to run upstairs and to meet Chef. And there's, staying in the hotel at the same time, is 24 Playboy bunnies who are all in their outfit in the lobby of the hotel. And they are like, and I'm in my best white coat. I'm meeting Jacques Pépin for the first time. I'm, clean apron. I'm very excited. And they're like, come over and get your picture taken with all the bunnies. And I'm like, okay. So I think the blood left my face, and I'm standing there with all these Playboy bunnies, getting my picture taken, and one's yelling at me that I charge too much for room service salad. And then Chef Pépin walks around the corner, and I'm standing there with his book and with all these Playboy bunnies. So I'm horrified. I don't think he broke stride, and he came over and signed my book, and we talked for a minute. I don't remember. It was just a dream, and I promise he doesn't remember that, but I woke up in cold sweats many nights thinking of the first time I met Jacques Pépin, how horrible that was. So, and since then, I've taught it, the program that Jacques founded with Rebecca Alsett and Julia Child, at the BU Culinary program, I've taught there for about 18 years, and we've become friends through that and had the opportunity to spend some time together, and I've done some work with Jacques Foundation, and it's just, every time he's here, it's exciting to see him.
How come the bunny didn't call me?
I don't know, yeah. I don't know. They were far more interested in you than me, I promise, yeah.
Well, that is a great story. Jacques, do you remember that encounter?
So.
Yeah. Well, there it is, for posterity. I'm curious about your work at the culinary school. I think we see in programs like the show that's on, I think it's on Hulu now, The Bear, where you sort of see this kitchen with a really rigid hierarchy in place. And I'm curious, is that the world you're training future chefs for, that sort of very strict kind of kitchen?
No, it depends. What you do in a professional school often is different than the classes that I may do at home, or the Facebook too, that we do more for people cooking at home. So it's a different type of training. I mean, certainly other professional chefs, you have to be a technician first, really move. It's 11 o'clock, you have 100 people sitting down at 12. It's not a question of doing a case of carrot. You have to do it in 15 minutes to do 2-3 cases. So the technique of a professional chef first has to be a very good technician who can move, to organize, and so forth. And then you go on a higher level if someone has talent and all that too. But I have met many professional chefs who are relatively lousy cook. Food is okay, but not that great. They still run a kitchen pretty well. And I've been to home of people who do a fantastic meal, maybe better than, but there is enough leftover for a week, and the thing is kind of a disaster. So it's a different training, a different way. What do you think? I
agree. I think that as my kids have gotten older, I've cooked more at home, and it's a very different skill set than cooking in a professional kitchen. And both are take a lot of years to develop and learn and get better at. And it's a craft that you work on your whole life.
As someone who also cooks at home, I mean, fair to middling at best, I really appreciated your latest cookbook, just leafing through it on many levels. One, the artwork is just so beautiful. The recipes are a lot on one page, which I love. They look quite doable and they look delicious. And you also write about being, economical, both in the way you cook and kind of using everything, which I know is probably standard, right, within the industry, but also just, how do I say it, being a little cheap at the grocery store. Yeah. Is that a fair way to put it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I do artichoke bottom, for example, I want to do artichokes, I go to the store and the artichokes are $4 a piece, and I may not buy them, but if I see they put them into leftover vegetables, 6 artichokes who are all yellowish and brownish, they sell it for $50. That's what I buy to do artichoke bottom, to spray meat, to do the stuff. I go to the market, I want to maybe cook a duck, but they see they have 2 chickens for one. Well, I'm going to change my menu to not have chicken. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty miserly in the kitchen, but I was raised during the Second World War, and my mother was a cook with a little restaurant, was very miserly in the kitchen. So, that was, but it's probably the only place that I can think in the world where we waste as much food as we waste here, because I've cooked from West Africa to China, I've cooked in Russia to usually, and professional chefs usually are you have to be, very careful. I mean, I'm more impressed if I go to a kitchen and someone is doing this, doing that with leftover, organizing, and someone who does a beautiful dish with enough stuff left over. That doesn't really impress me. Yeah, economy in the kitchen is, you cannot survive without it,
What he's teaching is so important, certainly in a professional kitchen, is, it's a business. You're buying and selling product, and you have to be frugal, and you have to, use everything. And a lot of foundational teachings are from that. You use the product, you use the whole animal, you use the whole vegetable as much as you can, and that's an important way to cook.
Yeah, we have a bad word attached to leftover, because people, roast a chicken, and they want to reheat that chicken, and it tastes reheated. But if you take that chicken, take it out, do a chicken pot pie or something else, no, you create a new recipe that had nothing to do with the first one. She'd have done better than the first one. There is a way of doing this, that's important.
Such a creativity involved, I think.
Yes, somewhat, yes.
And I wonder, Jeremy, have you, in the years you've worked with Jacques, are there things, I mean, now you've worked with a lot of chefs, a lot of people, but are there things specifically that you've taken away from your experiences with Jacques?
Yeah, I think the two things that jump to mind is just the joy that he has in cooking and the genuine enthusiasm he has about teaching and cooking and and being around food. I think that's something that I always admire and notice. And just, the egg and the truffle are equal. All the food is equal, and it's what you have in front of you is and sharing it with people are the most important things.
Yes, certainly. Cooking may be the purest act of love. You cook for your grandmother or your kid or your lover or your wife or whoever. So you cook, you always give. When you cook, you cannot cook indifferently. You have to put some of yourself in it. There is no way that you can cook indifferently. And I've seen people doing that demonstration. They never taste. They add that, they look at the recipe, they follow the recipe until the end and taste it. So no, you put A and B, you taste. You add C, you taste, and all that. I remember working for so many years with Julia. So we always say taste, so we taste. And of course, if I taste, and she said, what do you think? I said, I think it needs salt. She tastes, she said, no, it's fine. Next time, she said, taste. I would taste. I said, I think it's fine. She tastes, needs salt. So I said, okay.
That actually, we did receive a question in advance of this event. It was sort of along those lines, so I'll ask it. This is from an audience member who said, Jacques, you're a health-conscious chef. Julia loved her fats and butter. How was that experience of trying to cook together with those different points of view?
Well, I met Julia in 1960, just after I came here. The food world was very, very small at the time. I met Julia Child, and I met Craig Claiborne, who started at the New York Times, and James Beard. This is the trinity of cooking in America within a few months after I was here, because the food world was really, really small. It was a totally different world. And now, so I was friends with Julia for many, many years. We did many shows. We cooked together at BU. We taught together at BU. And we did series together. And what people don't realize is that I've done 13 series of 26 shows. Each time you do a series, you have a book usually, at least the manuscript of the book to give to the back kitchen so they have an idea of the recipe you're going to do that day and so forth. Well, to start with Julia, no recipe, so we'd say, let's cook together. So the cameramen were crazy because they didn't know where we were going, left, right, too. No recipe, but that's the best way for me to cook as a professional chef. What did I put scallion in that dish? Because they happen to be on the table, I throw them in. I don't have to worry that there is a recipe. So no recipe. We had a lot of wine. And the third thing is that many series that I did at KQED, I did the series in San Francisco, we have to do it on time. So editing is too expensive. So, it's 30 minutes, 29 minutes hour of cooking. They didn't want to go up, so you have someone with a sign, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 1 minute to wrap up, which can be pretty stressful, finishing 3 or 4 recipes. With Julia, they say, we are going to cook when it's finished, we'll tell you. So we did, some show we did 80 minutes, 80, 90. I wish we could find the B-roll, which have disappeared because it was, so we did no time restaurants, a lot of wine, no recipe. Hey, we had a good time. Yeah.
We have got the secret to cooking success. But was there ever conflict? Was there a time when you'd say, let's use olive oil, and Julia would say, no, butter?
Oh, yeah, every day, all the time. Yeah. So yeah, I can turn around, she stick a stick of butter into my stuff. Yeah. Yes.
Related, another audience question on the same subject. What's your greatest memory from all those years cooking with Julia Child?
There is so many memory of us being together and so forth. I love Julia. We actually cook basic. She always said we started cooking together. Well, I started cooking in 1949. I was in apprenticeship in 1949. She came to France in 1940 and 1950, 51. So it's true, we cook at the same moment, the same style, if you want, in a sense. She was 23 years older than me, so it's a different thing. But there is some truth in this, and in fact, when we cooked together, we had many later who said that she was much more French than I was. So it's true, because we work in the old style. I remember like doing spinach. Well, we did spinach once. I took a handful of spinach, I just washed wet, put them in a skillet with a lid on top. I said, a bit of steam, it's going to... She said, you cannot do that. I said, oh, why? No, in the old style, when I lived in Paris at that time too, you take all the spinach, you drop them in boiling water, boil them 2-3 minutes, drain them, cool them off under water too, and press them into bowl, cook spinach. You have them in the refrigerator. You have one order for spinach, whatever. You take this to cook with it. This is the old style, which I do too. So I said, Julia, we don't do that anymore. I said, no. Okay, so yeah, we always.
You mentioned you started cooking in the 40s. When did you know you were going to be a chef?
Well, you know, during the war, I mean, when I was a kid, my mother had a little restaurant that she ran. My father was a cabinet maker by trade. My mother was a cook. And we didn't have the telephone. We didn't have a television. We didn't have, you know, even a radio or anything like this. So life was certainly much easier for kids. I am a cook or I'm a cabinet maker. That's about the end of it, you know. So yes, my two brothers and I worked in the kitchen with my mother since I was 6-7 years old, peeling potato or washing bottle or whatever. So in France, you had to go to school until you finish your primary school, which is 14 years old, theoretically. And I was in that class when I was like 12. So I took all the final exam when I was 13. And I said, I'm leaving up. I went into apprenticeship, you know. So, and that was, you know, it seemed great now. A kid 13 years old, we worked 10, 12 hours a day. You know, but it was pretty common. That's the way it was at that time, you know.
To be clear, the apprenticeship was in cooking, not cabinet making, which would have been the other direction.
It was in cooking, yeah. Yeah, in the hotel in Bourg-en-Bresse, the town that I was born in. You know, so, yes, at that time also, it's not like, I don't think I ever saw a recipe before I came to America, frankly. Not, I mean, you work in the kitchen, say, you know, the chef said, do this, do that. You would never have said why. If you had said why, say, because I just told you. The end of the explanation.
Yeah, it doesn't happen like that anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So after a year of apprenticeship cleaning up fish, at that time we killed chicken, plugged chicken too, seal and rabbit too. So after a year of doing that, the chef all of a sudden told me, you start at the stove tomorrow. At the stove? I only came to the stove to put coal and wood in it. It was at the time we had. So, and I didn't know. And then I started working at the stove, and I knew enough, you know. You learn in a different way, you know. You learn by imitation. You learn differently than now. And I started working at the stove. So, but I mean, it was common at that time.
Yeah, I mean, Jacques comes from a time where it was genuinely the apprenticeship had very specific meaning, very specific timing, and you really had to come up through the ranks and start at the very bottom.
Right.
You know, and I think that is how good cooks still should learn. And I think that, you know, you have a genuine appreciation for each step of the ladder that you go up if you've had to spend enough time on the one below and learn all of those skills that you need to get to the next one. And everyone's in a hurry nowadays, I think, and you know, but to learn that way of cooking in a very traditional way is. It happens very little now, but it's amazing to be able to reflect on that.
Yeah, because it has changed a great deal. I mean, at that time, the cook was really at the bottom of the social scale. Any good mother would have wanted their child to marry the lawyer, a doctor, but not a cook. So now we are genius.
Oh.
And what happens? So at that time, the chef didn't go into the kitchen to create. That happened after the 80 Nouvelle Cuisine and all that. Now the chef, an artist too. But at that time, no, you work in a restaurant to conform what that restaurant was. You learn how it was done in that restaurant, and you did it over and over. It tastes exactly the same. I worked at the Plaza Athénée in Paris in the 50s, and for example, we did a lobster soufflé, just pretty famous. I think they still do it at the Plaza Athénée. We were 48 chefs in the kitchen, to the big brigade. The 48 of us could have done that lobster soufflé. You would never have known which one had done it. That was the idea at the time. It's very different now.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think there's two sides to it. A lot of young people get in this industry to be creative. As a chef, I don't want you to be creative. I want you to learn what I know, and when you can learn what I know over years, then you start to figure out how you want to apply your knowledge in your own way, and that takes time and perspective, and that's how you get to write 30 books, is spending that time learning and making mistakes. And I always say to young students, Jacques and I were just talking, he was here teaching at BU, they should be shocked when it comes out right the first time they make it. They should be surprised. And I think everyone's in a hurry, and just understanding that, it's a craft. It's years of your life that you get to develop and get better your entire life and learn new things. So,
yeah, for a professional, I think, I tell a young chef, I say, you try to work in a place where you have a good chef you can learn from. And at that point, don't go there with your own idea and opinion and say, no. You look at the food through the eye of that chef, regardless whether it coincides with your own taste, your own sense of aesthetic, doesn't really matter. You look at it through those eyes, and that's how you do it for a year, 2 years. You move to another chef, and you do the same thing again and again. You do it 2, 3, 4 times, and you have absorbed an enormous amount of point of view material. Then you start filtering it through your own sense of taste and aesthetic, and you do your own stuff. I mean, there is no question you cannot escape yourself. At some point, you do the way you do because you are who you are. I mean, if we go to different restaurants and judge them, it's going to be different. Because when you judge a restaurant, most of the time, it's purely narcissistic. I mean, it's just to happen to coincide exactly with your sense of taste, of aesthetics. You say, that's the best restaurant, which is not necessarily true for you or for you or whatever. That's the way it is, You cannot escape yourself at some point.
You've had such an interesting, not only have you reached the heights of the culinary world, and you've got this amazing success on television, your books, you've been a ski instructor, you worked for at Howard Johnson's invitation, you're an artist, and I'm just wondering, all those things, I don't know if you can even pick this out, but is there something that you would identify as sort of the most fun that you've had in your career?
No, all of that, it's true. I mean, you cannot, as I say, cook indifferently. And at home, I was married 54 years. Some of the greatest meal, that was just a tete-a-tete, my wife and me, maybe splitting a can of caviar and a bottle of champagne. So that we put in those books of menu, by the way. So yes, and all of that is part of our life. I mean, certainly when Claudine, my daughter, was a year old, I hold her in my arm and I said, okay, allez, mélange, stir it. So she stirred the pot with me so she would, quote, eat it because she made it with her father, And my granddaughter, with at BU now, second years, at BU, when she was 4 or 5, she cooked I put a stool next to me at the stove. I said, okay, give me the salad. That's clean, see, it's clean, smell it. So do that, give me this. Okay, let's go to the garden, I need parsley. She goes, I say, no, that's chive. That's parsley, that's tarragon. Taste it. We come back. I take her to the market. I say, I need pear. Make sure they are ripe. Did you smell them? You think those pear are ripe? Or those tomatoes? So she touched it too. And establish a conversation in our family. That's the way it was. The conversation extend after to other things and then to share the food. So it had always been our way of living too, and which is right for us, not necessarily right for someone else. But it's very important to get the kid involved. I mean, I feel that, when I was a kid, I get back home, when I was from school, I go into the kitchen. Of course, my mother is cooking. The smell of that kitchen, the noise of the kitchen, the voice of my mother, my father, and the taste of the food, those are kind of visceral tastes to stay with you the rest of your life. Those are very important tastes. And I can close my eyes now. You give me the chicken with cream sauce my mother did. I said, that's my mother's chicken. Okay, so you remember those tastes,
Was that your favorite dish growing up?
Well, it was one of my favorites. There were many, but certainly I closed my eyes too. You give me the striped bass of the Pavilion in New York when I was there, or the lobster soufflé of the Plaza Athénée, I would recognize those tastes, you know. So yes, we live by it.
And that's what this book that we borrowed from the gentleman in the front
Yeah,
row,
thank you.
The Book of Menus, is about. Can you talk a little bit about how that has been a way to chronicle your family's history?
Yeah, you can see here, those are a drawing of menu that I've done for people to write their own menu, you know, which that gentleman did a bunch of them. 54 years I was married, so we started doing that. When people came, I wrote the menu and people signed next to it. And remember, this is a whole, I have 12 books like that at home. See, the whole life. My mother, my two brothers who are gone, many people are in those menus. And I say my daughter Claudine is turning 56 next week, and she came home a few months ago. She said, "You remember what I ate for my 4th birthday?" I said, "Let's look." we find her 4th birthday. She drew little chicken too. She was with friends. You know, the whole life of Beverly are in those book of menu. That's what I draw those, and people write their menu, and you put the label of it. If you have a great bottle of wine, you put the label of it there. Sometimes I wrote the music. We play at that point. You can even take it to a restaurant. You go to a great restaurant, you take it, write the menu, ask the chef to sign it, and whoever invites sign it. It's a question of memory, you know. So the memory of food is very vivid. Yeah.
Nostalgia is a powerful, you know, taste reference. Remembering what you ate as a kid, and you know, the most popular dessert at my restaurant, we don't sell many desserts, is a butterscotch pudding, and it's the reason it's so popular. I think it's a nostalgic flavor. It reminds you of your childhood butterscotch. You know, it's not something you think of that often, but when you get that flavor, I feel like it has a reference for most people to think back on. And
right.
That's a powerful moment in food.
Anyone else getting hungry? Well, we heard about how Jeremy and Jacques first met, and I thought, Jeremy, with that kind of history, perhaps you would like to take the floor for a few minutes and ask Jacques some of your own questions.
Sure, I'm excited to. Yeah. Just so we're clear, no one's here to see me. Everyone is here.
That's not true.
I couldn't believe they put my name on the website. You know,
I'm here to see you.
My wife's here, and she's not here to see me. Yeah, she's here to see you. I guess my first question is: I had the honor of having you at my house for dinner the other night. How was dinner? It was okay. Yeah. Work to be done.
There was 4 chefs behind the stove. Well, they didn't even let me close. So, but it's all right. I drank a bottle of wine looking at them.
Yeah. The meal got better as the more wine he drank, so it was fine. Well, you know, we both taught at BU. You have certainly been there for far longer than I have. What still gets you excited about teaching and spending time with those young people and being part of that? Well,
teaching has always been part of who I am for many years. You know, I did that book, La Technique, in '74, which was an illustrated manual of cooking technique. And even now, 5 years ago, my son-in-law, who teaches at Johnson & Wales, told me, "Who do you want to teach now?" So we created the foundation. I think maybe people who have been a bit disenfranchised by life. So we teach people who come out of jail, homeless people, you know, former drug addicts, veteran, and all that, because I feel that in 6 weeks, you know, with video and tape, we have a lot of video, tape, book, and so forth, I can teach someone how to, you know, to peel asparagus and poach an egg and wash salad and so forth. That's the basic in the kitchen. If that person likes it, maybe 5 years later, you're the chef there, you know, in that place, and you can redo your life too. It's a great thing. So the teaching. So at BU, I came at BU a long, over 30 or 40 years ago. My daughter was in first year of high school, I think. So, and I've been teaching there, and then we started teaching with Julia. And in the 80s, we wrote to John Silver, the president of BU, to ask to do something in gastronomy on a level of academia, as doesn't really exist. We wanted to do it undergraduate, but they decided not to. So we created that Master of Liberal Art, with a concentration in gastronomy, which is still going on at BU. To my knowledge, one of the only places in the country where we do that. So yes, it's been a long, very great relationship. I mean, for me, and I still come here, and I was teaching them yesterday, and we had a good time.
Good. What do people get wrong when they start to learn to cook? What is the one thing that people consistently you've seen over the years start doing incorrectly?
It depends certainly more now as people want right away to start to creating stuff, rather than trying to follow something simple and doing it over and over again to get better at it. But of course it's a different way of learning how to cook at home for you or to cook professionally. It's a different type of training. But yes, I mean, the idea is to try to duplicate a taste and duplicating that. I mean, I would tell people, if you look at a recipe the first time, you should do it exactly the way it is written to do justice to whoever wrote the recipe. If it comes out good, you're likely to do it again. And the second time you take a look, fine. The third time you may take another look. By the fourth time, you say, I think I put more tomato in there or less too. And then you start, and eventually you massage it more for your own taste and your sense of aesthetic. And maybe a year and a half later, you don't remember where it comes from. That's your recipe, that's how you do it now. And that's the way it should be in progression, but not the first time you do it, try to change everything, no.
I think you're right. I always say a recipe, not pastry. That's a separate category. But when you're cooking, it's a guideline. Try to make it, and then over time you get to make it your own.
Absolutely.
Yeah, however you like it.
What's important is that people realize, if I work in a restaurant, and let's say one of the specialty, the chicken with mushroom, well, I'm at the sauce, I do that dish. So let's say I do it 10, 12 times that night, different order. Each time it tastes exactly the same thing. That's the idea. If someone were taking note exactly of what I'm doing, 12 times it would be different. And I don't even realize it. I react because the chicken is slightly thinner or bigger, my pot is a bit hotter or whatever. So you adjust, you taste, and so forth. Yeah, so don't you think so?
Oh, yeah. It's, consistency in cooking, certainly in restaurants, is probably the hardest thing to do, to put out 20 of the same dish every night and it to be the same. And for that guest to come back the next week and order that dish and for it to be the same as it was the week before, you're setting expectations. And you're doing that at home as well if you're cooking meals for your friends. And, I'm sure we all have dog-eared Jacques Pépin books in our kitchen and our favorite recipes and with stains on the pages. I think that is the greatest compliment you can give a cookbook if it's a mess and it's in your kitchen. But it's getting that to come out the same every time, year after year, and that takes a long time to do that. Famously, Jacques has always said we're all equal in the eyes of the stove. I think I'm saying that correctly, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's Jacques has made it clear that and I've had this experience in my own career in my own restaurants that the ex-convict next to the Harvard graduate are equals in the kitchen. It doesn't matter, and they all have the chance.
And around the table too. That's good.
No, it's been amazing to kind of watch Jacques carry that message through to this next generation of people. And I mean, that was his message for, grandparents and parents and my generation and now my children. We were very excited when Jacques came to the house and my 12-year-old's like, who's that? I'm like, you're going to learn. Jacques, is there something you wish people were better at, that are something that always gives them trouble? Do you see something that people consistently make mistakes at when they're cooking?
No, it's really different with people. Certainly, yes. I would tell again people the first time you do a recipe to try to get as close as you can to it, to try to duplicate the taste of whoever did it. But of course, you're not going to duplicate that taste, because if I do a chicken, I do my own chicken the next time I don't look at my recipe. Even if I do it the same way, it won't taste the same exactly. Or if it tastes the same, I have to adjust. There is no chicken with exactly the same amount of fat, the same amount of whatever. So when you write a recipe down, by the time you finish it there, but it's never to be done exactly the same again. It's not possible because ingredients are different. Today it's humid, today it's that. I cook with gas, I cook with electric, I cook with copper, with aluminum. It's humid, it's not humid. I'm hungover, I'm not hungover. I'm in a good mood, I'm in a bad mood. So yeah, that's challenge.
Depends how much wine you've had as you started cooking. Right. Sometimes you don't finish. You have to take a nap. We talked about your career and how you started, and it's so different today than it was all those years ago. Do you think that, I always call it a craft, I think it is something that you develop over time and skills you develop over your entire career. I mean, do you think the craft of cooking is strong today? Do you think food is in a good place?
Certainly, more in America than it has ever been, certainly. I mean, I came here in 1960. I live on 50th and First Avenue in New York, near Sutton Place, very nice place. There was a supermarket who opened. First time I went to a supermarket. It didn't really exist that much here, but in France it didn't exist. And I thought it was a great idea not to go to the fish guy, the meat guy, the vegetable guy, no, everything under the same roof. But I go in, a lot of package, and there was great meat. Lobster, meat, but there was one salad, it was iceberg. There was no leek, no shallot, no yet. I remember I say, what are the mushrooms? They say, aisle 5. That was canned mushroom. This is it. So, look at the supermarket now. It's very different. Yeah.
Everything's at your fingertips. Everything's an Amazon click away, any ingredient you want.
Yeah, on the other hand, it's deceiving too, because, you have strawberry year-round, but they don't really taste like great. If you go to a farm and eventually get some, wow, you see the difference, So you do have a lot of product now, but a lot of them are standardized and are not that great.
Do you think that's good for cooking, having those ingredients year-round, or do you think that people should understand more about where these products come from and the seasonality? And that
no, the season is very. I have a garden. There is no question that when you taste a tomato out of the garden in full summer ripe, well, it tastes like a tomato. You put a bit of salt on top, dash of olive oil. You don't need more embellishment. This is it. So why not? You buy the tomato. That's when they are really good in taste. Secondly, that's when they are cheap. Secondly, nutritionally, probably when they are the best. So, following the season, there is no question you go to a place where people live a long time, like in Sardinia, Sicily, or south of France. Yeah, people usually eat simply, but they follow the season, whatever grows at that time of the year. And it's difficult even to do now, because in the supermarket, you have all of that year round, you never know.
Well, it makes things easier, but I don't know that it always makes things better. Tomorrow's December 1st, and the question I always get asked, what is the food trend for next year, for 2024? Oh, bear with me. I hear moans. I never answer that question. Do you think food trends matter? Do you think how people are popularize different ingredients or different foods is really impactful to cooking over the years?
No, sometimes you have some change where it become important. Most of the time it's artificial. All of a sudden you have a red peppercorn or pink peppercorn. Wow, people get crazy, the chef too, and then 2 years later it disappeared. You have some type of something else, which comes, so I never really get to it, but sometimes it stays longer, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's a good, but
What is? Go ahead, Seth.
I'm sorry. Yeah. What was the food trend of 2023? I've missed it completely.
I did too. I don't know if they asked me.
I don't feel as badly. Yeah. Okay. Continue on.
It's great kind of filler for content. I don't think it really impacts. I've had people say to me, "Well, carrots are hot right now." How are carrots hot?
Steam them?
I don't know. I don't know how they're all of a sudden carrots are more popular than they were last year, but. I find it kind of comical, but I have the same perspective that Jacques does. So one thing I found really interesting, I discovered about Jacques a few years ago, and this book is we'll give you a small example, is Jacques a pretty amazing artist, and he does all these paintings and portraits, and he recently, earlier this year, ate at one of my restaurants, and he was just sitting there doodling on this page, and he drew this little doodle for me with shellfish and a bottle of wine and handed it to me, and now I'm like, oh my God, there's two things he's better at than I am as, the two that I know. I'm sure there's more, but unbelievable that, the artwork and just how it really connects you. I thought that it's so appropriate what he draws and what he paints as far as his genuine love for food comes through in all of these pictures and all these paintings. And several, my wife and I have several in the house. They're just really gorgeous. And I guess my question is, when did you start painting? When did art become an important part of your life?
Well, I started when I came to America, 1959. I came for a year. I'll say a year and go back. So here I am. But I left school when I was 13, so I decided to go back to school. I was working in New York, but to go at night. So I went to Columbia University in New York, and I went there from 3 weeks after I was here. I was enrolled there in English for foreign students, and I was there until 1972, where I was doing a doctoral dissertation. So I was there a long, long time. And during that time, I took a couple of classes in sculpture and painting. And I started, but I have painting from 1960, 1960, 61 too. So I've been painting a long time, and it's satisfying me in a way that cooking satisfies me too. It's very often I start a painting, and I don't know where I'm going exactly. So I have an idea, but at some point, after a while, the painting kind of take a hold of me, and then I react to it. And I'm not even trying to validate it. I put that color or that shape because it feels right, okay? And to a certain extent, working behind the stove too, you do an order, you taste, you adjust. You taste, it's almost automatic. You adjust, you taste, you adjust, that type of thing. So there are similarities in that sense for me, yeah.
Do you find yourself painting more as
Probably in the last few years. Well, in the last few years I did, because up to 7 years ago, I remember one time in Connecticut, where I live, you can recognize my Yankee drawl. In Stony Creek, a friend of mine, Gloria Zimmerman, my wife also, you want to do a show, so we did a show at the library there. So I had about 40 painting or whatever. So I bought 2 cases of wine, we'd cook food. I had all my friends, they came and said, gee, I like that painting. Okay, you can have it. I like that, you can have it. We get rid of the 40 painting and we never sold one painting. So up to 5-6 years ago, I never sold painting. Then my friend Tom Hopkins, who has been working with me 40 years, the photographer of all the books that I do and so forth, he said, I'm going to do an art site. And we have an art site now. And I sell more painting than cookbook, I think now, or strictly. And he asked for astronomical price, which I'd be also, and he sell painting. So, but I never did that before. But it's rewarding too.
Yeah, it's amazing. You can tell you love it as much as cooking. I mean, it comes through
yes.
as much as anything. It's beautiful.
When I start cooking, sometimes 2 hours, I didn't realize. Something when I start painting, sometimes it's 2 hours. I have to feed the dogs.
Jeremy, I think we're going to try, if we can, before the end of the event, to fit in 1 or 2 audience questions. We have some folks with mics here live with us, and if you're joining us via the webinar, you can also put a question in the Q&A. We'll see what we can get to. I think we just have a few minutes left. I'm not sure if this is the... Is this the final clock, or do we have a little more than this? This is the final clock. Okay, so quick questions.
Yeah. Here we have a question there. Oh, go ahead. We can repeat the question if you...
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
With all of your educational work...
Hi. With all of your educational work here in the United States, I'm wondering if you've had any impact on the educational system in France as well.
No, in France I would absolutely not know why I am. No way. No, I did. No, absolutely no. I mean, I think, I don't even think, I have 32 books. I had book translated in German, in Swedish, and whatever that I read it. And I don't think I ever had one book translated in French. I think, La Technique was translated, but not even in French, in Canadian French. So yeah, no.
We have some questions down here. I'm not sure where our mics are. Oh, right in the front here, yeah.
During the pandemic, your 3-minute Facebook videos, that's where I learned about it. I've seen you for years,
Yes.
but seeing those and becoming hooked on that, wonderful for all of us to be able to
Thank you.
have that.
Thank you.
How did that get started? Was that your idea, and how did that
No,
come
it was
about?
actually my daughter Claudine told me, people are talking, why don't you do a small show of like 3, 4, 5 minutes, show them what you have left over, what I call fridge soup, what I put in the refrigerator, whatever. So we started doing that, and Tom doing it, and at the beginning, even his wife didn't come into the kitchen. We had mass like 3 years ago, so it was him and me. And usually in one day we do 10 of those, about 3, 4, 5 minutes. So I did the cooking and the dishes, and he had a fixed camera that I look, and his hand held thing for close-up. Now Kelsey does the dishes usually. But so we started that, and we've done 340 of those. And it's on my Facebook, my Facebook. So it's free. So I never know what's on because my daughter takes it. We sent it to a friend of mine, Tina Salter, who was one of the producer when I was working at KQED, the PBS station. So she does the what do you call that? She does the editing and all of that too, and it goes back to Claudine, and then Claudine put whatever she thinks is good in season too. So, but yes, we've done a lot of those, and it's been in fact, we're doing some next week. I have about 10 I'll do next week. Yeah. Thank you.
Terrific. We have a little bit of time for questions, so if you're not shy, go ahead.
Monsieur Pépin, if you had 3 kitchen items that you had to choose when you were setting up a kitchen at a remote campsite, what would they be?
The first one would be my hands, without any question. I squeeze, I do a lot of things with my hand. And then a good knife. I mean, and when I say a good knife, it's a sharp one. And and a good board, solid, so that when you bang something, it doesn't bounce back all over the way. A solid board, a knife, and a good skillet, right?
That's all you need.
Yes. And a bottle of wine, that helps.
That's 4 things.
There's a theme.
First, I'd like to thank you for joining me for coffee every morning on Facebook. Every day. People get recipes from the internet all the time. Why buy a cookbook?
Yeah, I don't think you should. Cookbook is okay. But, it's not like a novel. People buy a novel, you read it, and you give it to a friend. People have cookbook, for years and years, and they kept, it's like a security. I was married 54 years. My wife did, in one of the first books that I did, A French Chef Cooks at Home. Yeah, it was, I think, the first book that I did. I do a cheesecake. Well, I had 2 packages of cream cheese there, 4 eggs, I think, half a cup of sugar, teaspoon of vanilla, and 4 eggs or whatever. So, very simple. She's done that for 50 years. 50 years, she had the book open in front of her. It's like a security blanket. I said, it's 4 eggs and 2 packages of cheese. So, yes, sometimes the cookbook is a bit of a security blanket.
I would also just say cookbooks are something you can touch and feel, and it's more than a recipe. It's you're getting a piece of the person who wrote it and trying to learn perspective and all those things.
Yeah, it'd be totally different too. People will love that book. People will love that one. Totally different. It depends how it coincides with your sense of taste, aesthetic. So you coincide with that type of person more, and you swear by that book. That's it. And that's how it works.
And you don't have to keep hitting your phone to get the recipe back when it goes by.
Right.
Well, you also can bookmark a cookbook.
Right.
You can't bookmark on the face of your cell phone or your laptop. I have a cooking question about lemon zest.
Yes,
I bet you put it in your cheesecake, don't you?
yes.
Wow. What does it do? You can also put it in meat recipes. Can you explain to me what?
Well, the zest with a lot of taste. I mean, if you take, and again, if you take the zest, take a vegetable peeler to really get the surface of the lemon. You don't want to take any of the white, which is bitter underneath. So it's just the surface. But you take that peel of lemon, open the gas, and press this. You will have flame coming out. And why? Because the essential oil is right there. This is where you have more taste in those 2 peels of lemon that you have in all the juice of that lemon. You know?
It's the oil or the juice from the lemon.
Uh-huh.
The oil from the lemon skin is
Yeah.
powerful, and it's
Sure.
and it's
So
a.
you shouldn't do that.
You should. I mean, it's a magic trick. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
Like if you lemon zest, orange zest, lime zest,
Yeah.
adding those to recipes are really. We're giving away our best secrets up here. We shouldn't be telling you guys that. Really powerful in cooking.
Yes.
Thank you.
See, he explained that better than I did. Oh, you do the next cookbook.
We're all going to be better cooks after this. This is great. We have some questions
We have
here.
one here. Oh,
Thank you. It's so great to see you. You're my culinary hero.
oh my
Thank
God,
you.
thank
Oh,
you.
him? Maybe 30 more years. Yeah.
We have a debate in our cooking together, and that is that my husband insists on putting bay leaves in things,
Uh-huh.
and I think bay leaves don't add 1 ounce of flavor. Can you give us some? Can you settle that argument?
No, I think you should divorce. I mean, there is no question. You know, I mean,
It's good advice. Yeah.
I don't know if we should continue after that. That was just sort of kind of perfect. We do have a few minutes more. If you want life advice from Jacques Pépin, he is here for it. There's a question up here.
yeah.
Oh, in here. Well, maybe we'll start here. We hopefully get
Good
it there, too.
afternoon, Jacques. Thanks for
Hi,
being here.
Thank you.
What's your favorite season of all the seasons to cook in?
Oh, that's a good point. I don't really have. It depends. Well, I mean, certainly, like in France, I remember the fall, all the wild mushroom, all the game would come in at that point, you know, from woodcock to pheasant to. So it was a world of cooking at that time following the season in the fall. I mean, Christmas came, and in France it was foie gras and oyster and goose and chestnut, you know, we cook for. And then Easter come, and it's when you have the fresh asparagus and poached eggs, and you know, a different world. And the summer was more for fish, and all that. So I would feel, you know, happiness in any of the season in different ways, you know, and yeah, that's good. But again, the seasons were much more accented before than now, you know. So now I don't really see much.
You
of
couldn't,
the game. Too.
You know, when I was young, I guess I'm getting a little bit older, you couldn't get asparagus this time of year. Now you can always get asparagus.
Yeah.
Asparagus is a spring vegetable. And when it's grown, you know, properly in the spring, and you can go get it fresh from the store or the market in the spring, there's something to that. And I
Yeah,
think
it's free.
there's a rhythm to cooking, there's a rhythm to eating, and you always kind of crave those different things in those different seasons. And that's, some of it we've lost, and there's benefits to that you can get those things 12 months a year, and there's a lot that's not great about it either.
I think one last quick question. Here we go in the middle. You win. Last question of the day.
You're looking to hire someone in your kitchen. You have a position open. It's a professional kitchen. You're limited in time in the interview process. What dish would you ask the person to cook? The one dish, to assess and evaluate him.
I know his answer.
I think I know the answer too, but I just...
You think I'm going to say omelette?
I think you're going to say omelet, yeah.
Okay, just a fried egg. Yeah, there is a way of cooking the fried egg at low temperature, you know, because I don't like the egg white too curly. It should be very tender, so cook at low temperature. Put a teaspoon of water even on it and cover it. It gives a bit of steam, so it cooks the top. So it's very simple, but if someone can do that, I say, oh, they have a sense of cooking.
I thought the answer was going to be an omelet.
So did I.
With a fork. With a fork.
Yeah,
Fork and
that
omelet.
sounds good.
That's right.
Lemon zest or no?
Yeah, not in the eggs, not there.
What a great afternoon
There
this
was
has been.
many here. Yes, she has a question.
One more.
One more.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to speak about cookbooks because my cookbooks are, I just have all kinds of notes around the recipes. And
good.
I get out my magnifying glass to decipher them because I don't want to lose them. So I find my cookbooks really important. I
Yeah,
also
especially if
check
you annotate them all the time and change. Yeah, it's a little bit like the book of menu. Sometimes you annotate them, you do that. I say, gee, I changed that, I did that the first time for my daughter or whatever. So, yeah, memory.
So they actually are very important to me.
Thank you.
Terrific note to end on. Thank you. Thank you to everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.